Hello, this video is going to show you how to master the planned aggregate expenditure graph, how to draw it and interpret it, the graph, and how it relates to the economy. This video content is going to include how to determine the marginal propensity to consume and autonomous expenditures from the graph, and aggregate expenditures and planned expenditures, planned aggregate expenditures on the Keynesian cross-graph equilibriums. Here's a quick overview of the planned aggregate expenditure equation. So, planned aggregate expenditures equal to A plus BY. Those are decomposed into two parts, one being the income-dependent one, B times Y, and the other one, A, representing autonomous expenditures, which is dependent on a bunch of factors that are including taxes, government spending, export demands, real interest rates, financial and housing wealth, things like that. The one thing that they're not affected by is income. B, marginal propensity to consume. That is simply that's simply what it's equal to in this equation. It's just equal to the marginal propensity to consume. You don't need to there's not many factors with that. That's just what it is in this class. Realistically, B would also account for how income affects net exports or how taxes and transfer payments change with income, but this class only focuses on the fact that it's equal to marginal propensity to consume. And then Y is equal to national income or GDP. So further detail on autonomous expenditures, they are expenditures that are not affected by the current income, and that is because consumption spending changes with different aggregate income levels, because the income levels change. There's still going to be a baseline level of expenditures that are going to remain unchanged no matter what the current income levels, even if aggregate income levels are zero or what levels they are. This is largely due to government spending, as they take up a large chunk of the spending of autonomous expenditures. They spend regardless of what the income levels are because they have to pay back things like Social Security and health benefits. And based on content covered previously in this chapter, all autonomous expenditures are based on these model assumptions, and you can go back on your notes and look at that. Okay, now that we have broken down and explained the planned aggregate expenditure equation, I'm going to start showing you what this looks like on a graph. So on our x-axis, note that we have actual expenditures equal to output y. And notice that we have all of these other components, and you may be wondering why are there so many components on the x-axis, and why is it not just like one expenditure? Why are there also outputs or GDP? Well, this is because we get the same number of GDP no matter if we measure for expenditure or income in an economy, so therefore we're just going to call this actual expenditures, represented by our y here. And then on the graph, our y-axis is going to be our planned aggregate expenditures, PAE. Changes in y cause a movement along the curve, and that is because if you increase planned aggregate expenditure, that is just going to increase the y value for every, if you move up and you increase this, it's just going to increase along the curve for every value you have. So it doesn't matter, it's not going to cause a shift. That's going to be a movement along for changes in y. And then the curve slope is just simply going to be b, which is equal to the marginal propensity to consume. And now that I've gone over the components of the planned aggregate expenditure equation, I'm going to show you how to graph this by scratch. First, we're going to write down our planned aggregate expenditure equation. PAE is equal to A, autonomous expenditures, plus BY, and B is our marginal propensity to consume, which is also going to be our slope of the graph, and Y is going to be represented by our output of production or income expenditure. We're going to label our axes. This is GDP, and this is going to be planned aggregate expenditure. We start off by graphing our aggregate expenditure, and that is always going to be equal to planned aggregate expenditure when this is 0, so this is going to be the y-intercept. Our slope of the graph is going to be determined by our marginal propensity to consume, which is multiplied by y. Now that I've showed you how to draw a planned aggregate expenditure on a graph by yourself, I'm going to show you how this is affected by the Keynesian equilibrium. So the equation is going to be equal planned aggregate expenditure equal to y. This is going to be planned inventories equal to actual inventories. This line is going to represent all points where expenditure is going to equal the output or the income. Another way to say this is that every expenditure of demand is going to be supplied. And this is going to be represented graphically by a 45-degree line. If our actual inventories are greater than our planned inventories, we're going to decrease on our GDP. And if actual inventories are less than our planned inventories, they're going to increase on our GDP. And if actual inventories are equal to our planned inventories, there's going to be no change in y because this is going to be in equilibrium with our Keynesian equilibrium. Okay, so this is going to be shown on our graph. This is the point in which no change is going to be needed to be made because our planned aggregate expenditure is going to be at the same output level as our Keynesian graph equilibrium. And this is where you want to be. So if your output is going to be to the left of the ideal output level, you're going to want to increase to move along the graph to this point, which is shown on the table on the slide behind, and you can refer back to that. And the same goes for if your output is above where you want to be, you have to decrease expenditures because you want to be in this area of equilibrium. And just to refer back to our planned aggregate expenditure equation, this is going to be where our actual expenditure A is going to be, and the slope of the line is the marginal propensity to consume. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you found this video helpful.